Welcome to Capitol Hill, where the debate over the carbon tax, what coalition MPs have said in the past and what Labor will do in the future led to some rowdy scenes in federal parliament. 6 MPs were ejected, 5 for an hour and 1 for 24 hours, as the Speaker got sick of the interjecting. Joining me to discuss the day's events is Labor MP Stephen Jones and Liberal MP Dan Tehan. Welcome to you both.
Morning.
Stephen Jones, we'll start with you because you've been something of a man of the moment today. First we'll go to Sophie Mirabella, the Liberal MP, who attacked Mr Jones over what she said was failing to stand up for his electorate. Here's what she had to say.
And I would hang my head in shame if I was you. You strut around this place thinking you've made it, thinking you're some big shot, and you are neglecting your basic responsibility.
The honourable
you pathetic little man. You abandon all those
Indi will resume her seat. I warn the honourable member for Indi.
Now, Stephen, you came under that attack because your predecessor in your seat, Jenny George, former Labor MP and a former ACTU head, has called for the steel industry to be exempt from the carbon price and also warned that that there's no compensation for a job that's lost. Do you disagree with Jenny?
Look, Jenny and I, good mate of mine, and look, we've got the same objective, and that is to ensure that as we're moving through the process of putting a price on carbon and weathering the storms of the highest Australian dollar that we've seen in a long, long time and high input costs, we're able to look after manufacturing. I said today in a statement here in the House that I want to see the same sort of benefits that were negotiated through the CPRS process, that is 95% free carbon permits. In addition to that, and this is where perhaps I go further than Jenny and say I want to see substantial assistance, industry assistance and regional assistance for manufacturing regions, because the carbon price is really the second or third order issue when it comes to what's facing manufacturing in this country. It's the rise of Chinese manufacturing, it's the high Australian dollar and the persistently high input costs for coal and iron ore, and they're the things that we've got to come to terms with.
But do you think the bar that Jenny George seems to be setting and AWU head Paul Howes explicitly set of no jobs being lost is too high?
Look, what I think on this is that, and I said again in a statement today, if you look at the last 20 years of manufacturing in the Illawarra and other areas around the country, we have seen significant change and unfortunately job losses. And even today we are seeing BlueScope shedding jobs in its Illawarra plant. It is unrealistic to think that there is also not going to be changes over the next 10 or 20 years. So anyone who says, I'm going to stick my hand on my heart until there'll be no changes in the makeup of the workforce over the next 10 or 20 years is pulling your leg. They're telling porkies. What matters is the assistance and the provisions and the policies you put in place to look after manufacturing industries and manufacturing workers. And that's what I'll be working with my colleagues on over the next couple of weeks.
Dan, the Shadow Treasurer, Joe Hockey, got up in Parliament and made much of Jenny George's letter on this question today. But does the opposition, do you also have to accept that the government has always said it will help those industries that particularly are exposed to export competition when it sets the carbon price?
Well, there's two things. One, that Jenny George has asked for Treasury modelling on where the jobs will be lost, and I think that we need to see that modelling, because it's all very well for the Treasurer to say by 2020 there'll be no net job losses, but what we need to know is where the carbon tax will cause the job losses and how those communities can recover from that. I've got the issue in Portland with an aluminium smelter, in Ararat with manufacturing there, and I would like to see that modelling so those communities know straight up what will be the job losses in those communities.
But is there also the potential for jobs, new jobs, different sorts of jobs to be created?
Well, there is the potential for new jobs to be created, but there is also the potential for vast job losses in manufacturing in Australia. And one of the things that we've seen today is that Jenny George has come out and said that she's prepared to go into bat for those manufactured workers. What we saw Stephen do was go to a press conference where the media release, my understanding is, was put out from Greg Combet. So he's been in to see see Greg Combet, done his briefing, the media release has been put out, and he's delivered the talking points, as Labor now tends to do, just deliver the talking points on what he's been told, rather than be there for his electorate and stand up for those jobs. And I think, if Stephen needs to go back to the electorate and spend a few weeks listening to what the workers say there, and then agree with Jenny that we need to see that Treasury modelling. Where will the jobs be lost?
Stephen, the issue, particularly for the export competing industries, has been complicated in the design of this scheme as it wasn't under the CPRS because the dollar is still high. Do you accept, does the government accept, that makes it much more difficult for those industries when they come to looking at how a carbon tax will affect them because they've got other things that they're trying to deal with?
This is what I accept, and that is whether we were having a debate around carbon pricing or not, and I think we should be, we would be having to look at what assistance and what programs we can put in place in this country to assist our manufacturing industries. And I'd actually like some support from your side of the House on this one, Dan, because I've heard your party saying plenty of things which is criticising our plans, but I've seen nothing from your side of the Parliament on what you want to do to ensure that we have a viable manufacturing industry in this country, because the carbon price is a second or third order issue. The real issue is how we remain competitive in terms of the quality of our goods and the skills in our workforce and the input costs that businesses are facing in terms of things like iron ore and coal and that sort of stuff. These are the real issues that is facing manufacturing in this country. And we need to have policies and packages in place to be assisting manufacturing. We should be having that debate whether we were talking about carbon pricing or not.
Dan, do you think the coalition should be looking at expressing some sort of package of help for those workers who are on those industries hit by the high dollar? Which no doubt would be there whether you were in government or the Labor Party was in government.
We took a very good manufacturing policy to the last election, and we'll take one to the next election. One of the issues facing manufacturing in Australia is high energy costs. Putting a carbon tax on top of those high energy costs is not going to help, and that's the issue we're dealing with at the moment. No, Stephen, I let you finish. One of the I wouldn't be going when it comes to Portland aluminium or comes to manufacturing in Ararat, going to see Greg Combet and then delivering the lines at the press conference which he's arranged for me. I'd be going to talk to those manufacturing sites and saying what are the input costs, and I've done that. And energy is one of those, and putting a carbon tax on top of those energy costs is not going to help manufacturing in Australia.
Another of the issues that was raised today in the Parliament, sparked by the Liberal Premier of New South Wales' proposed changes to workplace laws for public servants in that state. The government was reviving the ghost of work choices, saying that the policies were similar to those the coalition had under work choices. Dan, is the issue of industrial relations reform still a difficult one for the coalition? Well,
I thought it just smacked of desperation, what we saw in the Parliament today, and especially when we know that those Fair Work laws which were introduced, Julia Gillard, she negotiated for New South Wales public servants to be carved out of the Fair Work Australia agreement. So she did the carve out, and now they're bringing it up here. I thought it was an act of utter desperation. But
there are particularly industry groups calling for both sides of Parliament to move forward on industrial relations reform, but we haven't really heard from either side that you'll do that.
Well, I mean, we're listening very closely to industry and what they've got to say about these Fair Work laws. I've had something to say on this as a candidate, the 3-hour minimum laws, and what the impact that had unfairly on students doing work before and after school. So as issues come up, we are saying that there are issues and there are problems. So I don't think and we're listening very closely to industry on this.
Stephen, one of the Liberal MPs, Peter Dutton, sent a tweet during Parliament that said, in case of a 31% primary vote, break glass and mention work choices. Is the raising of the work choices issue because the latest poll has your primary vote so low?
No, look, we had Tony Abbott running around electorates, visiting coal mines and manufacturing plants over the last 2 months, professing a newfound love for manufacturing workers. What he doesn't say when he enters those plants is, I was the bloke who introduced AWAs. I was the bloke who introduced the legislation which had you guys being stood down and locked out when you were fighting for job security back in the 1990s. That's what he's not telling people. And as late as when he was IR Minister in the Howard government as well. So he's going around these places saying, forget the sins of the past, and as we've seen, you can't trust the Liberals on IR because Barry O'Farrell had nothing to say about IR in the New South Wales state election as well, but the ink's not even dry on the election writs, and here he is introducing the son of work choices. So I think it's entirely reasonable for the government to be saying, Tony Abbott, you're professing a newfound love for workers, but let's look at your track record and let's look at what your party's doing in New South Wales.
But given, and we're coming up to the anniversary next Friday of Kevin Rudd losing his prime ministership, given the three issues that Julia Gillard said were the ones that she needed to solve haven't been solved yet, that is the mining tax, the price on carbon, and what happens to asylum seekers. Is it unfair to say that you're going back to an issue of work choices because that worked for you and nothing else is?
No, absolutely not. And here's where the rubber hits the road. This year is going to be the year where we are delivering on some of our key policy priorities. Reforming the economy to deal with a carbon-constrained future. That means putting a price on carbon. Tough reform, but we're committed to doing it. Looking at ensuring that we get a fair share of return from the wealth included in our mining resources. Two critical reforms, and transforming the skills basis of this economy so we can compete with countries like China and other emerging economies. Now, there's no tricks, there's no easy ways around it. It's head down, butt up, and that's what we are focusing on. So we know that there'll be adverse opinion out around there. Whenever you're trying to introduce tough reforms, particularly economic reforms, there are people who are going to be out there trying to whip up concerns about it and oppose it. But we know that these are the tough things that we have to introduce, and I think 2 to 3 years from now people are going to be looking back and saying, well, what was all the fuss about?
Dan, in the opinion polls, the coalition's had a lead on the primary vote and the two-party preferred vote in the major polls for some time. Tony Abbott's never had a lead over Julia Gillard. It's never translated into a surge in his popular vote. What do you think that says about people's views about Mr Abbott?
I think the most important thing about this is whether the leaders are out there listening to what the concerns of the communities are. And I think that we've seen from Tony Abbott since he took over the leadership that he is attuned to what communities are thinking and feeling. I think he's picked up that people are very, very worried about what the carbon tax will do, that the rest of the world are not moving in a similar way, that it's going to jeopardise jobs, see those jobs go overseas, that we'll see no net environmental gain for it. So to me the most important thing is the feedback that we're getting from the community. And I must say, in the seat of Wannon, Tony Abbott, when he's been down there, has been viewed very favourably because he gets out amongst the community, he listens to what they're saying, listens to their concerns. He picked up on cost of living pressures. He's been arguing that we need to drive cost of living pressures down, not up. And I think that's the most important thing, that Tony's out there being seen and recognising what the community is feeling and the issues that are important to them.
But is it possible to take messages from the primary vote side of the poll, but not from the leader support side?
I think the polls go up and down, and if you start trying to read to them on what this means and what that means, you can get yourself in a very dangerous situation. So I think that Tony's taking very much the right approach. He's just out there listening, going out to the community, offering positive solutions. His trip to Nauru was highly successful, able to demonstrate that we could fix that problem within a few weeks.
And I'm sorry, gentlemen. We'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Dan Tehan and Stephen Jones, thank you very much for your time.
Good to be with you.
And thank you for joining Capitol Hill. Join us again tomorrow.